Welcome to the Explainer. So today we're tackling a subject that usually gets completely buried under a mountain of really complex macroeconomic equations. But instead of getting bogged down in the weeds, we're going to translate those dynamics into a clear, visual story using a pretty elegant simplification of it all. The ISLM model. It's honestly a brilliant way to see how the gears of an entire economy actually turn together.
To kick things off, I want to throw a question right at you. How exactly does an economy balance its physical goods with its invisible money supply? Seriously, think about it for a second. On one side, you have the tangible stuff, right? Cars rolling off the assembly lines, steel being milled, massive inventories piling up in warehouses. But on the other side, you've got something entirely invisible. You have the money supply, interest rates, and electronic bonds that are literally trading in fractions of a second. Balancing these two completely different economic forces is the ultimate puzzle we're solving today.
And the solution to that massive puzzle actually has a specific name. It's called simultaneous equilibrium. This is our ultimate goal today. It represents this one single magical point where both the goods market and the money market are perfectly balanced at the exact same time. Historically, you might know this as the Hicks-Hansen synthesis. It's essentially the sweet spot. No excess goods just sitting around gathering dust, and absolutely no shortage of money in the financial system.
So here is our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the big picture. Second, the goods market, or the IS curve. Third, the money market, or the LM curve. And finally, the crossing point.
All right, let's dive right into part one, the big picture.
Now, before we can even think about graphing these two markets, we really have to understand their fundamental personalities. And the contrast in their speed is just fascinating. The goods market is notoriously slow-moving. And well, why is that? Because it involves actual physical production. You can't just magically spawn a factory, hire 1,000 workers, and manufacture a car in a day. It takes time to produce goods and manage physical inventories. In stark contrast, the money market is lightning fast. We're talking about highly liquid transactions, buying and selling bonds, adjusting interest rates on the fly. The money market can react in a flash, which makes it incredibly hard for it to stay out of equilibrium for very long.
Moving right along to part two, this is the goods market, representing investment and savings, otherwise known as the IS curve.
Let's quickly unpack the alphabet soup of the aggregate expenditure equation. So total income, which is Y, is made up of consumption, investment, government spending, and net exports. The absolutely crucial insight here is that an economy must essentially buy everything it earns to stay in equilibrium. If overall spending drops, inventories are going to quickly build up in warehouses, and factories will inevitably be forced to cut back on output, which leads right into a recession. On the flip side, if spending is running too hot, inventories get rapidly drawn down, and producers have to scramble to increase output. So how does the interest rate actually impact all this physical spending? Let's zoom in on investment for a second. Most business investments, think buying new heavy equipment or expanding a huge facility, are financed through borrowing. So when interest rates climb, the cost of borrowing rises sharply right along with them. Because capital is suddenly way more expensive to get a hold of, businesses naturally pull back on making those big physical investments.
But, investment isn't the only thing taking a hit from high interest rates. Consider net exports. When U.S. interest rates are significantly higher than the rates in other countries, global investors naturally want to hold dollars so they can capture that higher return. That surge in demand makes the dollar much more expensive on the global stage. And when the dollar is expensive, well, U.S. goods become noticeably more expensive for foreign buyers, while foreign goods suddenly look a lot cheaper to us. As a direct result of all that, our net exports fall.
So when you bundle all of this logic together, you get the IS curve, and it is downward sloping. Why? Because as we just saw, higher interest rates inevitably crush business investment and they reduce net exports. When those two things fall, they drag down overall economic output, or GDP, through a multiplier process. So if you picture a graph with interest rates on the vertical axis and output on the horizontal, that IS line just marches downward. Higher rates literally equal lower output.
Okay, on to part three, the money market, representing liquidity and money, or the LM curve.
We are officially leaving the slow physical economy behind now and stepping into the fast-moving, invisible side of things. To really grasp this market, we have to talk about the opportunity cost of holding money. Think about the physical cash sitting in your wallet right now. It pays you zero interest, right? If overall interest rates in the wider economy are really high, sitting on zero interest cash is just a bad financial move. People are going to choose to hold a lot less physical money and instead buy bonds to capture those high interest rates.
Let's actually walk through exactly how this market reacts to economic growth. Imagine overall income and output in the economy suddenly shoot up. Because people are making more money and buying a lot more things, they suddenly need more liquid cash just to handle their daily transactions. That spikes the demand for money. But with everyone suddenly competing for a fixed supply of money provided by the central bank, that cash becomes much more expensive to get hold of. And what happens? That naturally drives the interest rate right up.
And that chain reaction gives us the exact shape of the LM curve. In direct contrast to the IS curve we looked at earlier, the LM curve slopes upward. An increase in overall income naturally leads to a higher demand for money, and that pushes interest rates up. So on our graph, as output moves to the right, the interest rate just climbs higher and higher.
Which brings us to part 4, the crossing point, and finding that ultimate equilibrium. All right, this is the grand finale where these two totally different worlds are basically forced to interact. On the one side, we have the downward-sloping IS curve, the slow-moving physical goods market, where high rates suppress output. On the other side, we have the upward-sloping LM curve, the fast-moving money market, where high output drives up interest rates. Now just imagine laying these two graphs directly on top of each other. When we do that, we get this absolutely beautiful synthesis. Out of all the infinite possible combinations of interest rates and economic output, there is only one single point where they intersect. As our source perfectly puts it, the one point that is simultaneous equilibrium in both is this crossing point. At this exact spot, there's no glut of unsold goods, and there's no shortage of money. Both the physical economy and the invisible economy are perfectly satisfied. It's a perfect balance. But as we all know, the real world never stands still. And that's exactly what makes this model so incredibly powerful. I want to leave you with this thought. If the government suddenly steps in and drastically increases spending, forcing that downward-sloping IS curve way over to the right, how will these two forces battle it out to find a brand new crossing point? Who actually wins when physical demand suddenly outpaces the money supply? Keep that dynamic in mind the very next time a massive new economic policy is announced.